Kaites, it's a greeting. Gareth Prince kind of mentioned that a lot of us in Cape Town are immensely blessed with, which is our indigenous roots, our Khoisan roots or Khoi roots, the First Nation peoples of South Africa, specifically for the Western Cape. It's the mother tongue of Africa. So I thought for the subject matter, let me bless you guys that have traveled so far with the mother tongue of Africa, Kaites. And it's a meaning that can be narrowed down into God bless. And that is basically, I think, a fitting description of what this plant is and the subject matter. I find that it's important for us to kind of hold the humanitarian value to cannabis. And that's kind of what I tend to think of medical cannabis in the context of curative medicine and the approach to healing, providing the cures to what we find is prevalent in the 21st century. But I see that coming from a development aspect, preventative medicine is what I'm more passionate about. And that is the couple of speakers before me, they touched upon that preventative medicine approach. And that is specifically now to kind of deal with the subject matter that is kind of staring us very plainly and blankly in the faces. How do we address the ills and shortfalls that we as humanity have gotten to in this day and age? And this plant is the solution to a lot of those problems. And my chat today, that picture, by the way, is part of 20-year history of not only activism, but the subject matter of industrial hemp or industrial cannabis. Beautifully shared with my Israeli brothers and sisters coming here. I learned that we use the term for cannabis called ganja. And in Hebrew, it's kind of been broken down for me quite poetically to mean Gan is garden and Jah is Yahweh, or as we say, Jah, because we have the J as a symbol instead of the Y. So it's basically, ganja means the garden of our Creator. So that is important because we share this beautiful history as humanity, and we are all kind of holding a piece to this puzzle. And coming here, I needed to condense 20 years of activism into 12 minutes. I'm here on behalf of the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa. We are a 5-member team, perfectly geared to engage with the international community. But more specifically, the happiest day of my life is standing in a field conducting a very important piece of information that I need to carry over to you. For us, we see this as a solution to a lot of the biggest problem that we're dealing with is job creation. So here we're conducting a manual harvesting protocol in the research, just to ascertain over a 2-acre plot what kind of manpower one would need in order to harvest the inflorescences. 2 speakers before me, you were kind of shaking your head about, okay, how are we going to deal with 3 potential problems, cultivars that can serve a specific end goal. We find with inflorescences, and we have a very large interaction of migrational workers in South Africa, moving from the rural homelands to the city and urban landscape seasonally. So we find that in the blessing that is Africa, I know Jerusalem and Israel to be the Holy Land. I honestly think that we're the land of blessing. So we've got land and we've got people in abundance. Also, the biggest factor, and I kind of heard that about 2 days ago from the guy from Aurora Sky, posting about 800,000 square feet of cultivation space in South Africa. That's more realistically around about 8 million square space. And that sits with rural farmers. That sits with our indigenous people in the homelands. my beautiful colleagues from Ponderland. I find it's important that we have this discussion so that we can speed up the pace of taking the stigma away from the plant, because we're still dealing with a bit of trauma from the last 100 years of prohibition. And us as a country, we have a very beautiful story when it comes to dealing with, I think, one of the greatest injustices on the planet, which is this separation. We as humanity have been systematically kept from each other. And not being able to share our stories and connect, and that is what I find is the beauty of cannabis. And for us as Rastafari, it's a sacred thing. So my activism, to a large degree, has ended up in this company recently registered. I've been keeping it a secret deliberately from the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa. In the Western Cape, there's the Cannabis Industry Development Cooperative. It's a legal vehicle within our Department of Trade and Industry. It's the vehicle that I found is conducive to the South African market. And something which I want to share with you guys is that you need to look as to how are millions of our people, in your home country or town or continent, how is millions of our people that is soon going to wake up to the reality of what cannabis is going to play their role in the global market? And we have to have these conversations now to see that, man, the sooner we start sharing information and experiential knowledge, especially from us as indigenous people, and I'm a bit of an anomaly here, and I share this with Bob Marley. If anybody knows Bob Marley, I don't need to speak on my brother's behalf. He shares a very similar experience with myself in life, in the sense of that he had an English father, his mom was a local Jamaican. The thing with Bob is, in Rastafari, you'll see, my name is Brother Benjamin. It's a cultural name and it alludes to the month that I'm born in. I'm born in March, so we are referred to as the Benjamins, the beloveds of our Creator. So Bob was born in the month before me, in February. He came specifically as in the capacity of the tribe of Joseph. If anybody knows that story, Joseph was immensely blessed. I think Bob's blessing was the fact that he had the gift of music. To a certain degree, at this stage in my life, I think I'm the one that has kind of been blessed to keep this plant, the herbal knowledge. So that's kind of what I share. I just came out on the lighter skin color spectrum, in opposite to Bob. But I'm very much in touch with my indigenous roots and culture. African Cannabis Enterprises is a partnership with some of the most successful commercial farmers in the country. We have got the stability in terms of experience in what they call international property law or intellectual property, which specifically looks after a lot of South African world-class fruit and nut and berry industries that are predominantly held by small farmers and breeders. And my team immensely and emotionally expressed a very big concern from the first day that I had a meeting and opportunity to engage, is to say that, Ben, listen, we big commercial farmers, our biggest fear is to not express this truth of losing this plant which has been kept by small subsistence farmers, because we are big commercial farmers and we trade in the global space. And that market is ruthless. It is unapologetic in terms of what it's going to do and swallow these indigenous farmers and who I call my fellow South Africans. And they said, let us defend you. Let us defend the South African breeder, the South African cultivator, the indigenous communities that need advice, especially our government, in understanding how do we set up a framework that is going to be conducive to this conversation of taking it from an illicit market to a formal economy. My clock is ticking very fast, so I kind of just want to get to the next stage. And this is our blessing. The Cape Floral Kingdom World Heritage Site is really something phenomenal. The role of indigenous and endemic bacteria and microorganisms was covered by a recent university study. You can just Google that. there's the bacteria that was discovered in our plant kingdom that is found nowhere else in the world, but it does also release some very interesting information in terms of what it does to the actual genetics of this plant kingdom. It's one of the most densely populated plant biomes on the planet. On a square meterage in terms of diversity, the scale of that diversity is off the charts compared to any other Mediterranean climate in the world. So we've been blessed and we've been entrusted with that beauty. Listening to the conversation, there's one key subject matter that is of keen interest to me, and I haven't found somebody that touched upon it. And this is the next field of research that we are focusing in, which is that's the bacteria, just kind of highlighting how it comes to be so diverse, is cannabinomimetic. And that is plants that mimic what cannabinoids do in the body. It's a field of research I think that you guys that are into medicine, you need to maybe have a look at. It's something we explored because of my mixed race heritage. I represent 3.5 million people just outside there in the Cape Flats. That's so diverse, it's actually quite beautiful. The complete opposite to what the media will portray it to be. And we have a strong Muslim community that cannot use cannabis. It's something which is very controversial for them, so we've needed to look at other plants that can supply feeding into the ECS. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, if there's anybody that is interested in having that discussion. Also, our landrace strains we find are high in THCV, CBG, and this is kind of what we're protecting. Our company specifically is there to help South Africa and Africa in the protection of that and dealing with a very big and important subject matter, which is plant variety patterns, which is collective pools of strains which are endemic to certain regions. And that kind of is what we're saying is important for us. Our sacramental, that is something close to heart, which is my practice, specific practice. This is a beautiful indigenous cactus, what's it, mesembrine. It's a kind of a desert plant. This is an everlasting plant. It's the Helichrysum species. Another cannabinomimetic, intensely richly cannabinomimetic in terms of species. And this is basically to say that, listen, medical cannabis up until this point is that not looking at the importance of African landrace and its stability, which has evolved over millennia, has kind of given us this important subject matter. Cannabis Ethiopica, the Genome Project, is the kind of cannabis strains that we're saying existed prior to colonialism. So we found ancient maps of Africa. It spoke about Ethiopia, you know, and it's written into a lot of Latin descriptions of plant species. So we're finding that potentially that we are holding onto this genetic, which travel through the slave route, the spice route, as they call it in modern times. Specifically, I just kind of want to fly because I'm out of time. This is what the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa is kind of focused on. If we can just fly through that structure, it kind of shows that we have the solutions to all of our problems. That's the example of what we think how our kind of graded GMP standards for Africa could potentially look like. My very, very close friend below, from moving from a heritage farmer in the illegal industry, he was one of the first license holders in Lesotho. He's really my mentor. We're working on breeding together and sharing that genetics in the global space. So we would love to chat on that level. But I am part of an international network of custodians when it comes to genetics. And that is what we are affording. We are hoping that we can address this very serious issue for us. My passion as a healer and being the fourth generation from our family that has been entrusted with that knowledge, I feel that I've done a considerable amount of looking at how cannabis actually heals, and I found that it is the bridge, and science is yet to prove what I'm saying, it is the bridge between the two hemispheres of the brain, you know, and it's the seventh system in the body that ties all your bodily systems together through homeostasis. And I find it's important that we look at this as very much the symptom of what we're lacking in the global space in not having cannabinoids, but also partner with us in sharing with our knowledge, because at the end of the day, while we're talking about the subject matter of medical cannabis, people are still in prison, people are still being brutalized. There's a very fat chance and very, very direct chance that any one of my team members here can get arrested out there. So we need to lock arm in arm so that we can protect each other, but more importantly, bring the cures. Let's heal our people. Let's break down the borders of our mind. I think as South African citizens, that is the greatest gift I think we can give to you, is to learn from us, to say that peace is the ultimate thing. Peace is the foundation of civility. It is the foundation of us to collaborate and appreciate our diversity. The Creator made us specifically the way we are so that we can cover each other in the shortcomings that we, from country to country, continent to continent, might not be able to see. But my brother or my sister on the other side of the world has been given that gift in order to see what I can't see. And that is why I'm here, to share a bit of my passion, the fact that I've defended this for 2 decades plus, celebrated my 27th year anniversary in this beautiful space with you guys. It's actually confirmation that we're on the right path as a couple. So thank you so much to the organizers, the people that have invited us here. This is really just the taste of what we have available to share. Okay, yeah.
Brother Ras Benjahman, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Great message.